Welcome to Beauty Talent Talk. I'm Debbie Johnson, your host. So at Beauty Talent Talk, our mission is to inspire, share expert insights to empower personal and professional growth. And today we have our guest, Elyse Conroy, confidence coach and career strategist. Elyse, thanks for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited for this conversation.
And Kirsty, our moderator.
Yes, indeed. So my job is to make sure that any questions that you may have, I bring to Elyse and to Debbie as well. So as we go through, if you want clarification on something, if you want to push back on something, if you just want to ask something that's burning in your brain, please pop those questions in the comments and I will make sure to bring them up with Elyse and Debbie.
So today our episode is the value of investing in your career. And this is something Elyse and I share as a philosophy. I think in today's professional world where there's such a quick moving of AI coming in and just the beauty industry continuing to change. And last year we saw a complete reset. Valuing the investment is really critical to stay competitive. And so, Elyse, I want to talk about how we can define valuing or just define the value of investing in oneself and how this can impact and kind of propel future growth and create a faster career trajectory.
Yes. And I think starting off just looking at what is investing in yourself, because I knew when I started this, I had no idea what that even meant. And it really is taking your skill set to a new level. Because think about when we're in college, when we're in high school, we're taught certain skills. But then when we get into the real world, in the workplace, we're starting to advance. We're now wearing executive titles. A lot of times people don't prepare us to be in these type of rooms. We're not taught how to deal with visibility and decision making. So there's times where we have to take a step back and see where we need to advance our skills in order to go to our next level. And so for me, when I started looking at investing in myself, the biggest thing that it saved me was time and energy, because I'd really spun my gears. I'd gone to a certain level, but what got me here was not going to get me to my next level. So the beautiful part is when you're investing in yourself, you are advancing faster. You have somebody who, like for me, what I do in my coaching, I'm here to reveal your blind spots. I'm here to show you what your opportunities are. I'm here to save you that time and energy and speed up the process because you're not making as many mistakes because you have a different skill set. You're opening up to new perspectives and seeing the things that you might have missed or things that you might have not known that was the block that was keeping you from going to the next level. And you have a different level of strategy, right? So you know what actually works. You have a different mindset. And I think about every massive leap that I've had in my career that really came on the other side of stopping, trying to figure it out by myself and truly seeking support. And one of the things that I will be forever grateful for is when I worked at the nail polish brand Orly, I had my team really, they weren't a big fan of me. They left a feedback form saying that my level of communication and leadership was like a bulldozer that left bodies behind. And I was like, well, that was not the objective. And thankfully they did not fire me, and they probably should have at that point, but I didn't know what I was doing as a leader. I had stepped into a leadership role. I had never had training. And for a lot of people in the beauty industry, that's where we find ourselves. So they made a 5-figure investment in my growth, and they hired an executive coach to work with me for 12 weeks. And they told me, they were like, if you take this seriously, it's going to change every aspect of your life. And it did, because I learned how to communicate. I learned how to motivate my teams. I learned how to really rally the troops and problem solve at a higher level. And my team not only shifted, turned around, wanted to work for me, they ended up nominating me for Employee of the Year on the other side of it, because it was so inspiring how I was able to turn the ship around. So I'm forever grateful for that, because I couldn't have become who I am today. I wouldn't be doing the work I am today had they not have seen my potential and actually invested in me.
Which is great. Now, it's interesting that you bring that up for the leadership and the investment they made in that, because statistically, and I've read this and I've seen it just from a hiring perspective, I mean, 40 to 60% of leaders have never had any formal training and development. So a lot of unfortunately, a lot of the ways they lead is trial by error. You know, you have people resign, you lose great people, and then you get an exit survey that really showcases what they didn't like about you, and that can be avoided. And so let's talk about corporate budgets. And, there are budgets for training and development, and that's not always highlighted. I mean, some of it's, of course, in benefits overviews, and some of it's not. Let's define what that looks like, and then we can go into how employees, candidates can try to leverage that to be able to invest in themselves, whether it's leadership, whether it is a skill set they feel that they could elevate and continue to propel themselves.
Yes. And this is one of the things that absolutely breaks my heart because most people do not realize that there's already a line item allocated in the budget for your growth and development. And typically it's either a learning and development budget, it's a professional development budget, and it's underutilized and it goes to waste because people don't realize that it's there. So I have worked for small, medium, and large brands. I've seen a couple $1,000s in this line item. I've seen 6 figures in this line item. So it really just depends on the size of the company. But this is a very normal business expense. And this can be something as simple as going to take a Microsoft Excel class, going to take an AI class, or all the way up to executive coaching. So I want everybody to know that for so many of the people that have worked with me, this was funded by their company. This was an expense that was never paid out of pocket. And people don't realize that that's a resource that is available to them. So I've seen companies pay for leadership retreats. I've seen companies pay for workshops, for conferences. When I hosted Beauty Career Lab Live, which you spoke at, Debbie, so many companies sponsored for their team to go. So we need to be aware that your coaching can be covered. And it's not something that is an unforgivable ask. I think so many people are scared to make the ask, but this is a very normal conversation. It is very normal for companies to invest in their employees because this is a business investment that makes their ROI higher because you're able to go to the next level with the company.
And I can share my own personal story. And most people don't know this, but at my last company, I worked for a founder-led, as a national agency. And let's say about 3 years into, maybe 4 years into my career, I had identified my associate's degree, but I did not have my bachelor's degree. And I saw firsthand how some professionals were overlooked, not having a bachelor's degree. So I put together a plan. I knew I wanted to go to Pepperdine specifically and go to their business school. And I talked to my direct supervisor at the time about potentially having them invest in me and paying for a portion of it. And she said, no, we don't do that. That's not an option. So I, at the time, was very successful. I was paying for myself, 2 times over. So I put together on a spreadsheet the amount of deals that I was doing, the amount that it was going to cost to have them invest. And I went to the founder of the company and I laid out this plan, and he saw the numbers. And I basically said, look, it's an investment in myself. This is only going to help me grow your business, which we're both going to benefit from. And he bought in. So every quarter he would cut me a check and he paid a portion of my tuition. And it was a win-win. I was very loyal to the company. I was there for 11 years. I grew with the company, and his investment was probably 10x at the end of the day. So I think sometimes we're afraid, and I certainly felt rejected when my own supervisor was like, no, that's not what we do. But sometimes that's just not the decision maker. And so I share this because don't give up because someone who probably didn't have the authority to begin with rejects that proposal. Go to the person who actually can. And sometimes that is the CEO, the founder, whatever the case is. So Lisa, I know you've had your own experiences, but for someone that is maybe uncomfortable with the conversation, what's a softer approach they can have with the decision maker to have that same type of proposal to get the investment, whether it's a webinar, an executive coach, anything that's going to help them propel their career?
Yes, I have a framework that I love to offer to people because we've got to always, number one, tie it back to the business outcome. So the more that you can actually give a statistic, a metric, something that is quantifiable to where they see this investment in me is going to actually impact the bottom line of the company in X way, we've got to be very strategic about that. So you've got to show the ROI and make it easy for them to say yes to you, right? And also make sure they understand that most of these investments are tax deductible. People don't realize this. And a lot of the hiring managers or the people who are making the decisions have never been in this situation where they've been asked for this before. So they don't even know that. So we've got to make sure that's there. And for me, I like to think of this as a strategic business conversation. And for so many people who are going into negotiations, whether it's a promotion, whether it's a job, you might not get the salary that you want, but you can negotiate your professional development in these types of conversations. Mm-hmm. So you always want to make sure you're strategic about how you leverage it, because once again, it's not a big personal ask. You're not being ungrateful for asking for somebody to invest in you. And I think so many people fear that. It's like, oh, they're going to think I'm greedy. So you got to get clear on the problem you're solving and how that's going to directly impact the bottom line. You've got to tie it to the business impact and really present the solution, not just a request. We've got to be solution oriented. And the more that they can see, wow, she's done her homework, like what you you said for your own personal example, Debbie, you laid it all out. And I had a situation where I wanted to go to a Microsoft Excel class. And I'm like, if I can do this, I can make the company more efficient, because I'll come back and do a masterclass training for the whole entire company. So they're making one investment in me, but the whole company benefits. And when they can see the ROI that clearly, it makes it very easy for them to say yes to you.
Yeah, I mean, it's a no-brainer at that point. Now, we talk about investment, but investment doesn't have to be expensive. I mean, there's many other avenues that professionals can do that are at no cost. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. And I love thinking about it as free resources, right? I host a confidence podcast that's all focused on career confidence and leadership and success. It's free. You can come and listen. There's 250 episodes. So podcasts are huge. You can come to specific events, right? Networking events. You can read books. There's a couple that I want to call out because I know for these were so pivotal in my development. And the biggest one that I loved, and I'm curious if either of you have read this, is The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks, because it teaches us about operating in your zone of genius, how to go to your next level without self-sabotaging. The Gifts of Imperfection by Brene Brown is another one that is so pivotal. And yes, I know I give that to every single one of my clients because look, I mean, it's hard because we're in the beauty industry. It's an industry that's built upon perfectionism. So we've got to be really strategic about that. So you can read the books, you can go to different seminars, you can go to different experiences where people, like what we just hosted with Beauty Career Lab, right? I host a free career coaching session every single month on the last Friday of every month where people can go and get free coaching. So it doesn't have to be expensive. It doesn't have to be something to where you're constantly putting out dollars. But I will tell you, this was something we were talking about before we went live. If you get to a point where you're not advancing and you're doing all the free things, that's a key area where you know it is time to make an investment, because we don't want to spend time and energy if you're not getting the results that you want. Because yes, it's great to use all the free resources, read all the books, attend all the events, listen to all the podcasts. But if it's not getting you where you want to go, you definitely want to make that investment in yourself so that way you can get there faster.
And I think that most of us have developed mentors. And I think mentors can also provide the guidance on maybe other avenues of where you, I, or anyone listening here today can make that investment. I think having an executive coach or having a mentor identify, hey, this was an area you were working on, and this is an area that you still need to work on, is so valuable, because when we're in our own lens and we don't know what we don't know, it's hard sometimes to know where you need to make improvements. And sometimes you're well aware of it because you've gotten feedback from an interview, or you've got feedback from your supervisor and they're laying out, what they identified is possibly a weakness or an area of improvement. So either way, the investment, I think, is key. And I think it's more key than ever from a competitive job market standpoint to either just technology that continues to move ahead. And AI, I think it's a 50-50. People find it scary. Sometimes people find it to be a highly productive tool. Wherever you sit between those two boats, the bottom line is it's coming, and it's going to be part of criteria. And we're seeing that right now. And so the more that you can be a pioneer and adopt new technology and implement it is only going to help you be more effective as a leader. And there's so many, like Masterclass is just a great example of something that you can buy into that's going to have different subject matter experts to learn from. So I think there's just so many different avenues that you can pursue. Let's talk about skills. When you think about today's employment market and the skills that are going to make people most competitive, to whether you're actively looking or passively looking, either way, you want to be competitive. If you're going to spend the time interviewing, you want the result, you want a potential offer. At least, what does that look like?
Yes, it goes back to confidence, right? And this is something, Debbie, you and I addressed when you came on my podcast. If the hiring manager doesn't feel the confidence from you during the interview process, they're not going to feel confident hiring you. And I loved when you said that because it nailed it on the head. And I think it's so underutilized as a skill because people don't realize that learning confidence is actually a skill, right? It's like I didn't have a confidence teacher growing up, so I became the teacher that I needed because I white-knuckled my way to the top of the beauty industry. I didn't have anybody to show me the ropes. And when we think of executive presence, and when we think of actually stepping into an interview and not having a head filled with what I call the confidence killers, which is imposter syndrome, your self-doubt, your analysis paralysis, when you're comparing and despairing, right? When you're in perfectionism and people pleasing, or if you're living with the whole not enoughness syndrome where no matter what, you can have all the titles and all the money, people will feel that from you during the job interview process. So I think it really does come back to confidence. And in that, when you have the confidence, your decision-making is going to get speedier, right? It's going to be more impactful. You're going to have more certainty communicate as you are navigating the decision-making process. You're going to be strategic thinking at a higher level, not just executing. And I always think about the people who truly command the highest salaries are the ones that can solve the biggest problems and have the clearest communication. So when we can bring that to the hiring process, when we can bring that into the conversations about negotiation or getting promoted, it only makes you stronger. And being visible, right? I had to work on visibility for a year to truly handle what it feels like to have lots of eyes on me. And I had over 3 million impressions on my content last year. And thank God I did the visibility work, because that's where so many people, especially at the executive level, they crumble because they can't handle being seen at that level. And they're so scared that they're going to fall apart or the imposter syndrome comes in and takes over. So we've got to do that. And also we've got to network. This is an area where I always say your network is your net worth, because the beauty industry runs on relationships. And there's a whole hidden job market that is happening on trade show floors, at dinners. And if you are not tapping into your network, we are missing the mark. And I had a client who I was working with who sent out 2,500 applications, 2,500. And I asked her, I was like, have you actually gone out in real life and had conversations with anybody? And she's like, no, I'm just sitting here behind the computer. I'm like, oh my God, we're totally missing the whole entire possibility, because that is where the conversion is happening. And I just hosted an event going into Makeup LA. Everybody was networking. People are getting jobs from those conversations because people hire based on people, right? And I think about when I was a product developer, I worked with people who I loved. And that was how business was being done. It was based on relationships. So if we're not relationship building, we're missing one of the biggest opportunities, because this is where the whole hidden beauty market is living.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just going back to relationships, it's like the fundamental, and it's the part that I love about the beauty industry the most is it's 1 degree of separation. And so continuing to hone in, develop, expand your network, it's going to pay off in so many ways. I mean, for career development to job opportunities, and just having people to lean on that are going through maybe similar challenges in the beauty industry, because there is a cycle, and everybody that experienced 2025 at one point was going through some of the similar challenges that exist in the business. So
yes, that is so important you said that, Debbie, because this is what so many women came to me who got laid off, because we know there were almost 17,000 layoffs that just hit people who had never experienced what it was like to go through a layoff, especially at the executive level. And they thought what they were going through was a them problem. And when I started doing Beauty Career Lab and bringing together people who had been laid off, and I launched a whole program based upon helping people have this, recovery moment on the other side of the layoff. And they're like, I thought it was just me. And so half of the battle is normalizing that what you're going through is not a you problem. This is a collective systemic issue that so many people are facing in the beauty industry. And once you can see that you're not alone in this, you become so much more empowered. And that's where your confidence is going to build. Your self-belief is going to grow. Your self-trust is going to go to the next level. And you're actually going to feel comfortable putting yourself out there in ways that you might not have, because you're going to know that it's not just you going through this. And I know for me, most of my career, I was like, oh, this is definitely an Elyse problem. I'm the only person suffering from this. But then when I started opening up about my insecurities or doubts that I was facing or burnout, I was not alone. And that's half of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's about an off the cusp topic, but I think it's very pertinent to just some discussions I've had. And I think that there's an opportunity here to shine a light on those folks that are at a company. And, yes, the industry definitely had a reset. And then there's some companies that are still doing extremely well. And there's some companies that were flat or not growing, or there's downsizing. But, some professionals are a little unsure about advocating for themselves, whether it is getting an investment to continue to grow professionally from the company and part of that budget that you referred to earlier, or even just advocating for a raise or a promotion. And I think it's a delicate dance. And I do think you need to read the room. But what are some of the fundamentals that you would coach someone that's in that place right now that really feels like they worked so hard in 2025, they've got the track record, they made an impact, but they're cautious to have the conversation to try to advocate for a promotion or a raise?
Yes. The first thing is, if you don't ask, the answer is always no. And this is where so many people get stuck. It's like, how could I ask for something when we just had a layoff? So this is where strategy comes into play, right? Because confidence without strategy is not what's going to get you paid. You need the strategy plus the evidence. So when we go into these conversations, this is where I see so many people miss the mark, is they are going into it not clear on what they want or why they want it. So that's number one, right? We've got to know what you want. Is it money? Is it resources? Is it someone investing in your growth? Is it you going to the seminar? Is it you coming to an event like what we went to, right? You can't get what you want if you don't know what it is. So if they can't give you the money, they might be able to give it to you in perks. So just be very clear on what the ask is, because if you're delivering a word salad, they're not going to understand what the benefit is. And once again, you've got to tie this back to a quantifiable metric so they understand what they're getting from it. The second part of it is you have to know your worth. If you are a high contributor and you know you have made, like I know when I had products that made millions and millions of dollars, obviously I was a high contributor. They were getting a very high ROI for me as an individual contributor. If you're not able to articulate that and you're not clear on the value and you're not clear on your worth and what you're bringing to the table, you're not going to be able to speak to your value with that level of clarity that is going to get you what you want. And also, I say this with so much love, but there's a reality in this industry right now that there aren't numbers in the budget that are going to be able to facilitate where you want to go next. And for a lot of companies, that's real. And you have to know that if you really need that, like let's say you want a $25,000 raise and your company just did do a mass layoff, are you ready to walk? You've got to know that going into it, because there might be another opportunity right on the other side of you making that decision. But if you're constantly just hanging on and you're job hugging, this is where I see so many people get stuck, because they're wasting so much time and energy clinging on to what isn't working and waiting for maybe next year, maybe they'll give it to me in this promotion, whatever. They're losing time and energy on this. So are you ready to walk? If the answer is no, because there is a limitless amount of opportunities, and I'm seeing a huge uptick in hiring. I have so many people reaching out to me about roles. Things are turning, and we've got to be cognizant of that, because so many people are terrified to leave because they're like, well, what if I don't get hired? Okay, but what if you do? Have you spent time thinking about that? Because if we're only worried about the worst case scenario and we're catastrophizing all day, we've got to make sure we're being very intentional about getting what you want. And that might be somewhere else. And that's a hard truth to face.
And I think it is also doing your due diligence in, understanding where compensation, I think, has been a moving target with what's happened in 2025. And so we've certainly seen comp go down compared to 21 and 22. But I think you have to understand the basis of where compensation is, what's realistic. The ask has to be realistic, and you have to have your contributions laid out. And again, that return on investment, which actually kind of leans into the next episode for next month. So next month, I'm going to be featuring Larissa Jensen. She's the SVP at Circana. And personally, I'm a data nerd. I love listening to the seminars and following data. I have found in the job market, you follow the categories that are doing well. You look at the trends in the business. And the title for next month is From Data to Talent. So what today's beauty trends mean for tomorrow's job opportunities. What does that mean? That means that when you listen to, if you just look at some of the trends that have substantially grown, fragrance, for example, fragrance has been exploding. Look at all the brands that have launched. Look at the hiring that's happened in the fragrance category. That wasn't the case 10 years ago. And then you look at Amazon and you look at social commerce. I mean, there's so many opportunities right now because that is a trend and it's growing brands and they're investing in more talent in those areas. So with Larissa, we're going to really tap into the roadmap of following data and how professionals can level up. I think marketing professionals in general, they use data to tell a story. And we know in a lot of executives do the same. So this is using data to validate opportunities, making sure that it's the right role across the board, but also being able to identify where is the growth and does it fit in with your skill set, or is it going to maybe be a skill set that you want to pursue? So it'll be an interesting conversation. I'm excited for it, April 30th at 12 p.m. PST.
Very excited about it too. And what I will say is we are coming towards the tail end of the show now. So if anybody does have any questions, please feel free to pop them in the comments and I will bring them up with the panel.
Excellent. So my final question that I always ask is, when you're a hiring manager, Elyse, when you were hiring, what were the attributes that you looked for in candidates?
Yes. I love women who walk in with a high level of certainty, and gentlemen too, right? When they come in with that certainty in themselves, it makes it very easy for me to say yes to them. So they're showing me in a very succinct and clear way how they can solve problems, the value that they're going to add. And I will never forget one of the best hires I made. Her name was Hannah Haleko. And she walked in and I was like, oh, this is a future CEO. She had head to toe. She was ready for the interview. She came in with her portfolio so dialed in. And she said, here is the value that I'm going to add to your company. company. And it was almost intimidating for some of the people on the team because she was so clear on who she is and what she brings to the table, but it was confident. It wasn't arrogant, right? And I think for a lot of people, they're afraid to truly come in level 10 confident. But here's the thing about confidence is it's not going to be perceived as arrogance, because arrogance is rooted in insecurity. When you're truly confident, it's an energy that people feel. And she was so clear in her communication. She had a point of view. She said, here's the products I'm going to launch for you. She stated her impact so clearly, and she was able to receive feedback. And I think when somebody comes in and you can see how clear they would fit in the role, and I've now interviewed hundreds of people at this point, it makes it very easy for them to say yes. And I had somebody say to me in an interview once, I'm very insecure. And I'm like, please don't ever say this in an interview, right? I stopped the interview and I was like, I love you so much, but let's have a conversation about why this is not going to convert to an offer for you. So we've got to be really intentional about who do you want to be when you walk in that room? What do you want them to know about you? And once again, it goes back to know what you want, know why you want it, and know who you need to be to get it, and really trust that the process will work itself out. Don't worry about the how and the when, right? What's going to come to you when you're aligned is going to be the exact opportunity that's meant for you. So for me, that clear certainty and their knowing who they are and what they can bring to the table, that's always a home run approach for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Confidence is key. We know that.
Yes.
Amazing.
Yes.
Okay, so the other question that we always ask at the end of the show is, Elyse, you've given us so much knowledge today, from kind of more practical tips to kind of the ways that we can change our mindset and how we think about things. But if somebody watching this or listening to this on the podcast and they're thinking, I really want to invest in my career, I really want to put myself forward, I really want to, be the best I can be, what is the single piece of advice that you would want them to hear above all else?
Yes. Know who you are without your job title. And I see so many people attach their identity and their self-worth. And I went through this on the other side of leaving Estee Lauder. I didn't know who I was without that job title. But if you really want to walk into this process with a high level of value and a high level of certainty, you've got to know what makes you valuable, who you are. And if you want them to hire you and you don't know who you are and you don't know why you're valuable, that's most likely why you're not converting in interviews. So really go into this process knowing what is exactly, who are you, right? What do you bring to the table? And don't make your decisions based upon fear. Don't stay in a job too long, right? Don't make your decisions based upon guilt or people pleasing. And always look at your opportunities. Every day you can reinvent yourself. So whatever didn't work in your last chapter, evaluate it. What worked? What didn't work? What do you want to do different in this next chapter? Because that's always going to give you your next step. And when you're in the place where you are looking at every day as reinvention, then there's no failure that can take you out, because okay, cool, that didn't work. I'm going to redefine myself tomorrow. And the women and men that I see winning in this industry are people that are unfazed by that. And I teach people how to fail with confidence, right? And when you're failing with confidence, there's no failure that is going to take you out of the game, because you're just going to use that as feedback to inform your next best success. And when you're in that mindset, it makes your success inevitable. So just reinvent yourself, know who you are, know what you want, and the rest will work itself out.
Amazing.
Well, that's going to be a wrap. So thank you, Elyse, for joining us today. It's been an amazing conversation. I look forward to seeing everybody next month. Have a great day.
Bye.